Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio today Professor Udenta. Udenta is a visiting professor at the London, not London College,
Yes,
not London
UK.
College, and a former lecturer at Abia State University. Professor of Cultural Studies. And he has done a lot. And we're going to discuss his travels, his contributions, but also his travels as Nigeria struggles with evolving democracy, nascent democracy. Professor Udenta, I got to know him in the early 90s on account of his contributions, his writings, and on account of his activism in the fight for democracy
in Nigeria.
Yeah, so, and it came to a head in 1993 when Abacha took over, when Babangida steps aside. Babangida steps aside the 24th of August.
20th of August.
20th of August.
Yes.
And then we began a series of activities, not very pleasant.
Not very pleasant.
And for some reason, I never went to, I was not detained.
You were not detained.
For some reason.
But your name was all over the place.
I hope
Cabinet Secretariat.
I hope you know that I actually spearheaded the publication of the Oputa Panel report.
That's precisely what most people do not know, and that is the story that has to. I'm happy it's coming out.
I mean, I spearheaded it.
But before then, even anytime you mention Father George Ehusani, what comes to mind is a very radical, very deeply knowledgeable and very uncompromising moral force that is heavily in support of democratic transformation and bitterly opposed to military dictatorship. That's the image from the East.
Yes.
I
got to know you, and then it is on the basis of the same cause.
Of the same struggle.
The same struggle.
The same struggle.
So, Professor Udenta has been involved along with
Nwankwo, and the whole bunch of radical
Clement Nwankwo
too himself, Bakoba, Chimobani who is late now.
May the Lord bless their souls, those that have died. Power to Tommy, concerned professionals, Ganifawe Himi, Beko Ransom
Kuti is still alive, and with
Beko
us.
Ransom Kuti, and so on and so forth. At the time, I was called Nadeko Chaplain.
Sure. Absolutely.
I was called, and they said I was you people's chaplain.
Chaplain, you were, in a way, in a sense. I was telling the even rest as a coming here that Reverend Father, I'm sure you know him in Enugu, Obiorike.
Of course, my friend, yes.
Almost everybody who fled Lagos was accommodated by him. Quietly. Provided safe houses. Yes. Where those fleeing from the state.
And in Lagos, we had some of those meetings at the Catholic Secretariat. Because it was difficult to have it elsewhere.
So that is part of the tensions of the moment and the kind of convulsive history we're all part of. How did I journey there? It was possibly rooted in history. As a high school student, I performed a play, played the lead role in a play called Torrents of Soweto, about the South African struggle by one Tunje Fatilewe, not a very major poet, but a dramatist, but a very important work then, on the Founders' Day. So I played a role in that play where Ndaba led the charge for the Comte with Sizwe, the military wing of ANC. I was leading that in the play, and I was eventually gunned down by the apartheid regime. Soon after, we had issues with the school authorities, and I led a struggle. I was 16 years. So the principal then, a brilliant educationist, who actually now, upon reflection, made our life what it is today, said, because you played a role as a fight against oppression, you're not constituting the students as oppressed people and the authorities as oppressors. That was my instinct sharpened as a struggle. And secondly, I became a Marxist at 15, 16, before I left high school. So that again led to a sense of rebelliousness. Even for me, not attack against the church, I've reconciled that now, but some intellectual disputation that I felt a sense of distance. At 17, I led the youth of my community, the higher institution students, a struggle against the elite. 17, and ultimately set up what I call mass consciousness movement. Had a village library, purchased almost all the classic works of Marx, Engels, and Lenin. Got some other works donated.
I remember that your writings could be compared to Makebo. What is his name?
Stanley Makebo.
Stanley Makebo.
And the Chidamota.
I mean, I was reading them together, and I said, "Wow, this."
So that was the history of that struggle. So when I entered the University of Nigeria in Sokoto, it was easy for me to identify the Marxist platform. Anything that was rebellious, that challenged orthodoxy and establishment, anything anti-establishment in nature was my forte. I became leader of that movement in my third year. The rest is history. Therefore, as a university teacher, first at Polytechnic, Federal Polytechnic in Oko, in Anambra State, ultimately at Abia State University, in Utru, in Abia State, I got involved with Atomogwo, who had his home in Enugu.
Oh, yes.
They called the Four Dimension Institution, not just the publishing outfit. Ultimately, we converted that institution into a leadership training center where people will gather and then get inspired. The kind of thing you're doing here, Father. People will gather, not structured as it's structured here, but an informal training center for people to learn, be groomed, be mentored. It was in that context of grooming leaders that Abacha struck, that the first and foremost Junta Foundation was annulled. What would be our response to that as intellectuals, as scholars, as writers? And I had written then my first work, which I actually composed as a 22-year-old. Revolutionary Status and African literary process. How do we domesticate Marxist intellectual and the aesthetic theories?
Did you have, while you were in the university, did you have any link with Bala Usman at ABU?
Not at university level. Okay. Ultimately, when we were building State Money Union, and he and the late Barab Musa were building NEPU PRP, a reincarnation of the NEPU PRP of the old, we intersected. Because they had three formations: Eastern Money Union for the East, NEPU PRP for the North, and Afenifere for the West. These three bodies came together to create a concourse of partnership of the elite level, at the upper level. Under us, of course, we have the UAD, the CD, CDHR, and the so-called mass democratic organizations.
As you refer back to those years, the early 90s and mid 90s,
very tension-soaked.
I regret that we are losing this ideological, intellectual rigor that young people. And the fire in the belly, the passion that spurred young people at that time.
Beyond the passion, Father, I was a university lecturer. I was a tenured staff. I was growing. I had published. Four Dimension helped me to become an international scholar at a very young age. So I was a senior lecturer by 1995, and I was set for promotion as associate professor in 98 at the age of 32 or 33.
And you risked all that?
I risked all that, and I was traveling to Lagos from Enugu 2 times a week for 3 years. 60% of the time, an attachment, 30% holding the rail. You hold the rail, no seat to sit, not even attachment seat, the kind of bench they have at the middle of the floor, holding the rail from Onitsha to Lagos. This hand will pain you, and then you change to this hand. Not going to make money, not going to do 419.
But to go and associate with others to strategize on
to save the country, how to restore democracy. Yes. And I'll get to Lagos with my 2 legs swollen early morning. And I will still move straight to 9 o'clock a.m. for the meetings, series of meetings and conversations, sometimes with ambassadors and high commissioners. 7 p.m. back to the park. In the morning, swollen leg. 3 days later, back to Lagos for 3 years.
While you guys did all that for democracy in this country.
To thrive.
While Clem Nwankwo them with PRP, what do you call it? CRP.
Constitutional Right Project.
Yes. While Olisa Bakoba with CLO and all these other various groups.
Committee for Democracy and so on.
While all that was happening in the 90s, and we worked on it until suddenly Abacha died. I would say, Udenta, how do you feel watching the characters that are in the corridors of power, hanging around the corridors of power, and
cementing their grip
on
power and
cementing
society.
Their grip on power and society. How do you feel? Because you see, when I look around, I can hardly recognize any of the names that we are mentioning now.
At all.
None of them is anywhere near power.
Okay.
And people fought, lost their lives. How many times did you go to prison?
6 times.
You went to prison 6 times?
6 times.
And I know how many times Clem Nwankwo went to prison. How many times Chimamanda went to prison. I know how many times Olisa Bakoba went to prison.
And charged for nothing.
Charged for nothing.
Nothing.
Gani Fawehinmi went to prison. People who actually fought for this democracy.
And imagine, at the periphery. They are at the periphery of the country. They're not inside
so
the
when I sit down before television and I see the people who are hanging around the corridors of power, in my own lifetime.
There are two things, Father, that we have even to say in this context. I never knew when Abacha died. It was like a week or two after. I was in detention. On a cement floor.
Yes.
Actually, cement floor, and I didn't shave for about 2 months. I didn't take my bath for a month and a half. So it was one of the who said the big man had died some time ago. I said, big man what? He said, Abacha is dead. I said, who's the new head of state? He said, Absalom Abubakar. That's how I got to know. Now, fast forward to, as you said, 30, 20-something odd years. Let us concede that we got it wrong in some regards, and I have to make that confession open. We never wanted to form a party called Alliance for Democracy. We never wanted to participate in a regular pyrotechnics of the transition.
Because we thought that the military was still
we wanted to restructure the same language of today, the country, through a sovereign national conference and then a rebuilding of the infrastructure of the country. Absalom Abubakar, in a way, shockingly for me, defeated us in the argument. We said, we're not going to be part of this year campaign, this is a new order of democratization. He said, what are we going to do? Abiola, who won this election, I may confess to you, who won the election, he's dead. I'm here because the boys in the army said I should be here after Abacha died. So none of you won any election. So I can't install you as interim leader, chairman of any government of national unity. That's what Abiola to have taken. So you go and form a party. Rather than governing, do a sovereign national conference as the mandate of your new party and your new power. Secondly, I can't give you that sovereign national conference. The boys in the army think it's like breaking up the country. Run on that plaque. If it is as important and cogent as you're making it, you will win. Form a government of national unity. Don't take power alone. We went away to form a party. We never saw the constitution they were making. When eagerness was to get the military off our backs. And in getting off our backs, we didn't know they were going to be called. It's called closure. Closure is not just in terms of elections and swearing in and inauguration. Closure is in terms of constitutional closure. Once a document is the basis on which a new president elected with his hand on the Quran or the Bible, to amend that constitution to the degree of restructuring is almost impossible.
That's why the debate which is the problem now.
He's heading nowhere. That's number one. Number two, the French ambassador in '99 and the American ambassador separately told me, as the National Secretary of Alliance for Democracy, we checked around. Father, you are just like prophetic. He said, we checked around the names and drilled into the history of those taking power as governors and senators.
Not one.
We don't have anything about them prior to taking power.
Yes.
So somehow from the blue, and no society grows out of the blue.
No.
There must be a connection between the struggle of those and then taking power to sustain it.
That is what is helping South Africa in spite of everything.
Absolutely.
Because the people who took up power are linked with the people who struggled. And who had a vision.
Where society should be.
Yes. What vision do the people who are occupying power, what vision?
That's exactly the place we are today now. So, and that is why it brings on the issue of legitimacy. And it's very important, Father, we bring this in the context of this conversation about my 60th birthday. A lot of people are now asking the crucial question. The purpose of democratic governance and the consequences of military coup d'etats spreading like a contagion across, no longer West Africa. It's spreading beyond West Africa now, across Africa now. For me, there is an over-reliance on the Constitution as a fetishization of the Constitution. That means, go to the Constitution.
Everything is there.
If people are starved, disempowered, hungry, bitter, disillusioned, and the Constitution is there, no, you can't chop it. So that is why the text of a Constitution, periodic elections that produce results that do not provide legitimacy. It is how you have included everybody, almost everybody, into political governance, economic, growth, in life expectancy, uprise, human capital, human infrastructure development. If you miss out on all those critical sectors of the economy, diminish unemployment, provision of public services and public works, health, education, shelter. And each day you preach constitution, you preach election, you preach some sort of thing.
Listen,
people are not going to listen to you anymore.
Udenta, Nigerians and Africans are seeing China. And they know that China does not operate the model of
democracy of the West.
They are seeing Japan. They are seeing Saudi Arabia. And they are saying life is better for people in these places
than it is better for us here.
They even say the Russia that the West lampoons. They even see life is better for most
in
people.
Spite of everything they've thrown at Russia, they're still standing.
So people are beginning to say, wait, now democracy will go chop. I mean, you have a situation where they say the country is in dire straits economically. They say we are spending over 90% of our
servicing
debts. Then you go borrow more only to buy luxury vehicles for your leaders.
Absolutely.
You see, I mean, I've seen one minister went home a few days ago, and the bulletproof car he is riding, I'm told, is about 300 million naira. And I'm saying, if you see the rickety things on the road conveying people, and you see the quality of roads, what our people are suffering today, and then we have leaders who do not share in the plight of the people.
Let me put it this way. Even 24 years of democratic governance, I'm in the habit now of talking about the tissues of this democratic governance, the visible, tangible ones. Education may be contested. Say, okay, is it increasing or is it decreasing? Do we have more universities or less? Okay, debatable. Agriculture or value chain, in terms of even fertilizer and other inputs, storage, food security, are we doing better or not? Health services, that's okay. One critical area that the entire project has collapsed is the power sector. But before we enter this conversation, sorry to reveal it here, this is not public power we're using.
Of course, we are self-sufficient with power here.
This is self-sufficient. This is solar energy or whatever it is. This means that we're complete cut off, complete disentanglement of your own institutional facilities from the public delivery of power, which has failed.
Completely.
So if you now look at 1990 date, that hundreds of billions of dollars have been poured into that sector and they're generating darkness. And the system is standing. And government is still functioning. That is actually what is remarkable.
And
that is what is remarkable, that you wake up in the morning in zone 3, other places there, I have to buy fuel in an office from morning till night every day. In the center of the city, not in the outskirts or ghettos.
Yes.
It's the fact that the system is standing. That human beings wake up and use charcoal iron.
Yes.
That is what is
in
called
the 21st century.
Decay of thought and the abdication of thought by Nigerians as a whole. You know what I call that? Either roboticization or imbecilization of the human entity. You find a situation where when fuel scarcity hits you and people are there in the line for 48 hours and they finally manage to get fuel, they phone their wives and said, darling, I've gotten fuel. Run the water for me to take my bath. That's a sign of failure. When the system manager look at it and said, these are the leads standing in line for 48 hours, they're smart. Then there's nothing we cannot do to them. The fact that you have no fuel and for 8 hours here, they're standing there sweating, some are sleeping in your car, upper middle class. And the minister drive past and said, these are not common folks.
Yes.
It means the elites have been defeated. The middle class is now finished.
Completely.
So there's nothing we cannot do with them.
While they stand there for 48 hours for fuel, the governor, the minister, or the president drives to the airport with 20, 30, 40 cars burning.
Because you know why they do so? The defeat is very glaring to them. There's nothing these people cannot take. So if you can stand a guy who has gone to school, sometimes abroad, with a 2nd degree or 3rd degree, with a good car, and is standing there not questioning his humanity, why this thing that is cheaply available and common, I'm here for 48 hours, demeaning myself, and his guy before him is quarreling with him, your car is near mine, the bumper is close enough, you're not putting against the system, the governor or the minister.
The system that condemned you
to this kind of dehumanized and imbecilized state. That is how they do whatever they do to get away with it. That's why a minister can fly 300 million worth of a car and say, there's nothing they can do. So self-help in whatever form is the new order of the day. The limits of democratic governance is illegitimacy. If you cannot provide for the people, you're not legitimate under any consideration. So people who had under the fetish of democracy and constitutional text to say, or the constitution and parliament, that's sufficient that...
Well, what has happened in Guinea, in Mali, in Chad, in Burkina Faso,
Niger
in
Republic,
Niger,
and now Gabon
is directly questioning that fetishization of democracy. People are saying, democracy will go chop.
No, they can't chop democracy.
And I have warned couple of years ago, I issued a video where I talked about the revenge of the poor.
Yeah.
That the revenge of the poor is at the corner. If the elite, the privileged political economic elite, if we do not do something, if you don't walk towards change by design, the change will happen by default.
By default, absolutely.
That's what has happened in these other countries.
You know, when I went to China last, an amazing thing happened to me. And I saw that, and there is a conversation I'm going to bring to this table. From the airport to the first hotel, from the airport in Beijing to the local airport in Jiang and then in Wuhu, and Wuhan. From the duration of the 2-3 weeks visit, the initial day, Father, there were 175 scholars from 45 countries, experts and media strategists, handled solely by young people not more than the age of 27. Every person that had the number, Yue, Wang, and the rest of them, none was more than 27 years. China has thrust its youth to the world to embrace.
Yes.
So in that sense, we are watching you as Communist Party leaders, as members of the Politburo and Central Committee. We don't care how you do it. If you disappoint China and fail the leader, Xi Jinping, the consequences are enormous. So young people, I was sympathizing with them. Because you're managing 175 people with individual needs. The best hotels, 7-star hotels, best food, best seminars, conferences, arranged it, talk. Not one step was missed. Rather, I could see them even when they're stumbling because of the enormity of the work pressure. They kept their heads up. Nobody was guiding them. No chaperone, no mentor. They've been mentored at home and said, you are the face of China to the world. How about Nigeria? What is the face of 1.4 billion people?
They are the ones that are unemployed, underemployed. They are the ones we abuse every day in this country. That segment of the population.
So when I looked at it and I said, there are bright young people in this country. I've come in close contact with some of them. What opportunities are open to them? What are the spaces under which they operate? What kind of appreciation that go with the kind of work they do? Nothing whatsoever.
Before we finish this segment, I need to let our viewers know that Nigeria is celebrating Udenta at 60.
Absolutely.
We thank God for keeping you alive. You could have died in one of those detention, one of those kulaks.
I'm not going to take words out of her father, but let me just put this out there. The last detention was revealing, and I defied the logic and the wisdom of the Asians. Zik, of blessed memory, greater known as Zik, we used to say, either an anecdotal saying or some urban legend. Don't fight with a man or quarrel with a man with a gun.
With a gun.
I quarreled with men with guns. There were about 65 of them that came to arrest only 7 people. And when we started, there were about 3 cars with flashers. Ultimately, there were 25 cars with flashers for 7 people. And I was rattling with my mouth. I was far younger, more vibrant, more daring. And then I had the AK-47s, about almost like 20 cocked.
Yes.
And I said, fire, these are toys. You are imbecilized and dehumanized. Look at inside the compound. There are up to 9 cars, including a limousine. This is what is called classic committal of class suicide. We've elected to fight and die for you, people like you. So fire this gun, they want their blind, nothing can happen. I said, if one drunken one with some sort of
had fired,
I wouldn't be sitting with you here. One smart guy said he talks too much, put him in the boot. So they put me inside the boot and locked it. And I was still shouting and kicking the boot from there. Shouting abuse and said that do what we like. This system must unravel. Democracy must be restored.
You were meant to live.
Meant to live.
God wanted you to live. So we are grateful to God that you are alive to celebrate 60. And you put your experiences from age 13 when you began to read and write, put your experiences into 21 books.
21 books.
And
counting. There are about 4 books now almost getting ready. By next year, they should be out there, to be harvested. And we definitely need to celebrate those books. Can you tell us 1 or 2 of those books? I mean, the ones that are after your heart. The 2 standard ones there is the one I did as when I was starting, The Wrath of the Gods. The wrath of the gods. The anger of the gods, more or less. Denja Abdullahi, former Anna Association of Nigerian Authors, the president, reviewed it and edited it for publication. And at the back, in the back page blog, he said, it is difficult to ascribe this work, the boyhood imagination, the coherence, the way characters are developed, conflict resolved. It's almost a 250-page work written by a 13-year-old with a character development that was amazing. I didn't know where I got inspiration. I didn't know where I got that power and potency of vision and the skill to write the way I did. So that work is a standout. If I'm going to say a masterpiece of my boyhood works, that will be that, even though it's in contention. Some people say they love the rediscovery of the Listoga, modeled after Nick Carter, the American spy. You know, I use my name as a spy. That's number one.
That's one.
Now,
the second one.
Revolutionary Aesthetics for Its Place in History was written 1986, published 1993. Today, it has taken its place as a canon of cultural scholarship and the critical, thinking in African literature today. At par with any kind of work you may imagine, producing many masters and PhDs and turning many careers into sudden success. The journey to publication was a very harrowing one. That's why from 86 to 93, that's almost like 7 years. It was in the shelves. No professor wanted to touch it. No editor, no publisher. I refused to yield. I said, I know what I set out to achieve here. As a 22, 23-year-old, on that one or 4 dimension, saw the book. He said, have you written anything? I said, 4. He said, bring one of them. I brought the first one after my heart. He went through all night as a seasoned best publishing, indigenous publisher in Africa.
4th dimension.
Yes. He called his younger brother, the managing director, and said, this work has to stay the light of day. It's a masterpiece. He said, we have closed the publishing, season. He didn't want to spend any money. He said, I will pay with my own personal money. I'm the owner of this company, but I will pay with my money to get it out there. So Arthur paid with his money to get that work out. Victor came a few weeks after the publication to give me the first fruits, bitter fruits, one savage review and one decent review. I was in tears. He said, I didn't do anything. Why would they attack me so savagely? So I didn't accomplish. He said, are you stupid? A Caucasian mind used the pen to savage you in one of the leading journals in the world. You should be calling it.
You should
party.
be celebrating.
You
should be celebrating.
So that is one. Autonomy of values is my work of philosophy. Is another one I can think about.
People will get to see a lot of those works, and like you said, they are already being used for masters and PhD theses and so on and so forth. And how I wish our young people who today are into Yahoo, who are into Yahoo Plus, who are working on quick money. I mean, if you are to use your prodigious brain to look for money, you would have been
sure a lot more.
But there is value in knowledge.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you have fulfillment.
Complete fulfillment.
When you look at your shelf of books,
I say complete fulfillment.
There's
I am fulfilled. I'm a fulfilled person. In spite of the ravages of the system.
Yes,
and the underwhelming achievement of the
And I
Nigerian
pray,
states.
you're 60, and I pray that in your lifetime we'll begin to see real change in our society.
I hope so, Father.
Happy 60th birthday, and God bless you.
Thank you, Father.